We call it the annual trade summit. We bring everybody to Ottawa, and it's taking place November 26 and 27 at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, just off Parliament Hill.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hey folks, we got a great show today to talk about from the Simply Trade podcast. We're going to be talking about the IE Canada conference that's going to be held in Ottawa in November. So we'll give you the specific dates here in a minute. But I want to introduce, we've got, now I hope I don't butcher this. And if I do, you just know I'm just a dumb country boy here in Illinois. Warrington Ellacott, right? All right. So Warrington, you're with IE Canada. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm the chair of the organization.
Oh, there you go. And so IE Canada is Import-Export Canada.
Yeah, basically, we're the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters. Yep.
There you go.
Been around since about 1936. Represent all kinds of sectors: automotive, oil and gas, food and ag, you name it. We're in it.
All right. With that that's a great organization. And the conference that you've got coming up, is this an annual conference for you?
Yes, sir. We call it the annual trade summit. We bring everybody to Ottawa, and it's taking place November 26 and 27 at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, just off Parliament Hill. Beautiful hotel, very historic hotel in Canada. And it's walking distance from Parliament. And we do it because that we get a lot of engagement from politicals and bureaucrats, and it's we've been doing it for as long as I've been on the board, and it's like over 10 years. It's a fantastic event.
So there's a reception on Monday night, the 25th, though, right?
Yes, sir. Okay. So usually what people do, they travel in Monday. We can set up meetings if they so desire with officials, and then we have a cocktail reception on the Monday night to get things going. And then the formalities begin on the Tuesday, and then we have a formal reception the evening on the Tuesday, and then we finish off on Wednesday.
Okay. With that, I understand that you have somebody that's going to open up the conference on Tuesday morning. That it's just just a little old, most folks may not know him.
We're trying to get some senior officials. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have been following. I mean, you have your own race for you got your own thing going on with the presidency and all that administrative stuff. But we got our own thing going on up here too. So the stability of the government right now up here is very, very tenuous. So we're trying to play that card as much as we can. Yeah, no, hey, we've got some good things going on. I don't know if you want to do it now. We can talk about what we're planning on doing. But so we're going to try and start the morning off on the Tuesday, obviously with an economic forecast from our friends at Export Development Canada. One of their chief economists will all ground us on where we are in terms of the USMCA and the economic forecast, what the outlook looks like there. A couple of senior officials looking to invite to have a conversation. And then we're hoping to get the U.S. engagement team that's been flooding in, having conversations with all your fantastic governors and heads of state about the state of the USMCA and the importance of Canada and U.S.-Mexico trade. And then we're going to talk about the USMCA review coming up in 26, which is very important for everyone. Hope to get a WTO perspective also in the morning. And then Kim Campbell, our famous Kim Campbell, is going to talk with the Customs Brokers Association, get their perspectives on what USMCA looks like. And then the Ukrainian ambassador to Canada will be speaking. That's a very important discussion there. For our friends and colleagues from USCBP, also coming up to have a conversation. We may have a CARM conversation.
We're going to have CARM. For those of that may not know, that you may hear about CARM and all that, it's like, all right, you've got a scenario here that there are some folks that have been developing a system that, quite frankly, looks like they would screw up a 2-car parade in a 1-block route.
Oh, well, you said it, not me.
I know it. See, I can get away with that. And I'm going to come up with that. Here's the problem. I'm going to come up and it's like, okay, we need to, check this guy out.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Canada is modernizing its accounting and accounting systems for the collection of customs and taxes and duties. And we're all hoping this thing works, but we're not really too sure what we're going to get. But that system is going dark as of Friday, October 4th. And it will be down for several days until the 21st of October. And then they're going to turn it on and let's see what we get. So we're going to be about 4 weeks into this thing at the conference. So we're going to get a number of perspectives from folks on the trials and tribulations, opportunities, and risks that they're getting there. And I'm sure that's going to be a lively conversation.
Well, especially with the officials. So it may be one of those that we're going to have to all be ready to run interference with some of this. Because I'm going to tell you, hey, Canada is considered somewhat of a passive culture, but man, you get on some things that they can get pretty passionate.
Well, I do foresee, if the government can't collect duties and taxes, there's going to be a little fiscal problem for the government of Canada. So you might think that there's going to be some attention paid to this file, but anyway, we shall see. Following that, I've got a wonderful international trade panel. The Deputy High Commissioner for the UK is coming. We have the head, Ms. Tran, for the head of the Vietnam Trade Office, as well as head of the European Trade Union section in Ottawa to talk about international perspectives. So what's going on in Canada, international trade, and this will be a lively discussion post November 5. And then we're going to do something really exciting with you guys. We are going to record a pod live from Ottawa off the floor of the main stage. So this, I think, is this a first for you guys?
For doing it in the conference the way we're talking about, yes, it's we've done recordings of shows off on a side room or whatever.
That's so good. No.
This is like
full room. Room, full audience, live on stage.
It's going to be greght.
It's going to be a hoot. And you got to wear the hat too. You can't do it without the hat. You got to bring the hat.
You know what? That's yeah. It's I've gotten it. If I want to go incognito, all I got to do is take off the hat and not wear any boots, and I'm all right. But usually it's like everybody's looking for it. So
yeah. So I've been I've been to a number of these. They are a blast. Everybody gets to chime in and hoot and holler. It's going to be a good one. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then of course, we do a little awards thing to recognize some professionals in the industry. And then we go for cocktails. That's the way we do it. The next day, which is the Wednesday, we're going to talk about the sanctions and, forced labor and child labor provisions that are happening up in Canada. These are similar, but a little different twists than the U.S. And there's a good possibility we might see new Canadian legislation too, which will reference roughly what you guys have got going on with the UFLPA in the U.S. So we're going to talk about that. Look to have an RCC session. We're trying to put that together. We just had U.S. and Canadian officials reaffirm the Regulatory Cooperation Council. And I'm a big fan. I went through that in terms of energy efficiency, and that worked out really well. And then we're going to talk national security. We've got Tony Seabauer. He's a director from the CSAF. It's a national security organization think tank. He also teaches at the Royal Military College. So, no, and what we're talking about is, this activity on connected vehicles foreign made vehicles and whether that's a risk to national security. And I know you've had some conversations in the US. These conversations are happening in Canada now. And what does that policy space look like? And of course, the recent events in Lebanon were a big concern for the security of supply chains, right?
That opened up a whole, it's like quite interesting, wasn't it?
Well, this is it, right? And I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. And certainly, as an organization, we're taking a look at that right now. We're setting up some conversations with officials. I'm sure you guys are too down south. And then we're going to have an artificial intelligence panel. Now, to give you some history, I had this same panel last year when all of that chat GPT thing was going down. People really didn't understand what AI was. Some people were deploying it in supply chains and using it sort of as compliance tools or operational enhancements to their, movement of goods and people and resources. But I wanted to bring those folks back 1 year later to see where we're at. So that's going to be great. We've got the two top think tanks, startups in Canada, as well as senior officials from the government of Canada. So that one's going to be great. And then we're going to have a legal panel. So you better hide. You better get out of there. I've heard things, So, but we've got the top 4 trade lawyers in Canada on stage, telling us all what keeps them up at night. And I'll be hosting that session. Trust me. And then lastly, we're going to get a number of our association colleagues up on stage. And again, trying to think about how they're looking at 25, what's keeping them up at night, where risks or opportunities. And then, all of us in the board get to step up and say hoot and holler. So it's going to be a great show.
Well, I will say that with everything that you've got right there, I mean, there's a lot going on. One of the things I want to come back to, and I want people to give thought to this, because you may not be in the automotive industry when you were talking about that, but with the connectivity now of automobiles and the satellite GPS tracking, the internet capabilities, the data exchange, all that kind of stuff, all that. Stop and think for a second. Let's back up. A few years back, there was the issue that was discovered about the wireless routers from China. That was Huawei that manufactured them, and it was discovered in the Pentagon actually, where in the middle of the night or different, it was a downtime, and they were noticing data transmissions, like significant data transmissions. And that's how it was discovered, to find out that anything that went through a wireless router, it could have been a text message, a phone call, it was emails, just any of those kinds of things. You're scrolling, web pages for things and doing searches or whatever the case may be. And you may be on the intranet, your internal web systems, or even external, whatever. All of that data was being transmitted to China. And so it was, huge amounts of information is going through. Well, okay, now let's step away here and now look at the way parts are being manufactured, different components are being manufactured, the automobiles themselves. And so to that extent, it's like, okay, what if you are an executive with a company, and there's a component that could be some minor component, but it is now integrated into that automobile, and that processor is now storing data and then transmitting it to somebody. And so you're looking at potential corporate espionage. You're looking at espionage on a country basis, and all kinds of things. And so that's the one thing that, as you were saying, in that security, that would be a discussion, be well worth it. So if you are a provider of services or a client of things where you're buying these things and you need to see what's going on, that would be a session to be worthwhile checking out.
Yeah, I mean, you've had discussions in the United States, and we have here on securing the food supply chain, right? End point to end, disclosure, tracking, that kind of detail, and certainly in materials and chemicals space, this is being done. But now think about complex electronic articles, right? And my day job's in the appliance industry, and we have basically washing machines that are connected. And so now you have a conversation about the stability of the electrical grid. And you've had those conversations in the United States about the cranes at ports, cameras, modems, like so. This conversation in this policy space is going to expand rapidly.
Oh, look at that! Even think the brand new refrigerators that are they're Wi-Fi connected. They're sitting there listening to your conversations. And how often do we have some very serious conversations at home in the kitchen?
Yeah, so I mean, you can imagine though, if your listeners are thinking about their existing process controls and documentation and disclosure, whether that meets those new conversations that are taking place both in DC and Ottawa, and how are those conversations going to come together, more importantly in the USMCA context, for me is likely my primary concern. Within as we approach the 26th review, but this is hot stuff. This is really hot stuff. So,
I agree wholeheartedly. So, and hey, listen, the most important thing though is recording that show. It's like you never know what's going to happen. It's kind of going to be like that box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
That's right. Well, when I get a guy from the Royal Military College, I'm sure he's going to share some stories.
You know what? That's one of those cool things. But I will say that up there, Kim Campbell is going to be my co-host during that session. And Kim and we will tell you the story, how Kim and I initially met. And it goes way back when she was with Customs and I was with FedEx, believe it or not. So there's a funny story there. And to this day, Kim will not let me forget something where I stuck my foot in my mouth. So
what better
we will
place
talk
to
about
embarrass you on stage in front of a live audience? That's the best.
Of course. And it has just been great. It's like Kim is she's so wonderful and well respected. Now I saw recently where she has also been. I guess you all had some kind of a meeting in front of Parliament.
That is correct, sir. Yes, this week we were testifying in front of they call it the Canadian International Trade Committee. So this is the principal trade committee for the Canadian government parliamentarians, right? And that discussion was around the implementation of CARM. And you can imagine there was quite a wide range of perspectives as they given at that meeting. But the principal tension here is whether, the Canadian Border Services Agency, CBSA, is ready to activate in a one-stop, one-shop kind of an atmosphere. And CBSA seem to feel they have some confidence to go. Industry has a different perspective because, industry's been involved in testing and certification of the software and things of that nature. So I don't want to bore your listeners, but the net outcome of that hearing that took place last Wednesday is there another meeting taking place this Wednesday, and you can watch that on ParlView, PARLVU. And the discussion will be whether a motion will be tabled by the committee to defer the implementation of CARM once again until April of 2025.
Well, here's the thing that I guess I'd have to ask you with the delays that are going on. All right, first off, I think it is everyone that does agree there needs to be a major update of the system.
No doubt, no argument.
Okay. with that, and I took a shot over there on some of this, but in the approach, it's frustrating in that it seems like, and I'm an outsider looking in here, it seems like that the folks that are, shall we say, driving the bus on this development of the system either are not from the industry itself with experience, or they're just refusing to really listen to, and they're trying to come up with like, well, this is just what you're going to get. And unfortunately, it will not provide the equivalent of what you have today. It actually, you'll be having a setback in systems and services. So the issue is not about not supporting CARM. It's like, look, guys, you've got to understand that you are going to be devastating the revenue flow to the country, as well as negatively impacting the supply chains of everybody going into and out of the country. So I
think, principally, I mean, from our trade association's perspective, there's no debate that a modernization of these systems is required. So let's just stop there. But however, the principal rationale for an update of this system is that the system must calculate duties and taxes properly. You saw what occurred in the UK for the postal system. Canada's had a couple of poster child events for software enterprise installations. The Phoenix Pay system was a federal government payroll system that this did not work. And now this recent ArriveCan app situation, this was, created during COVID. And so there is a track record here of enterprise installations that have not gone well out of the gate. And to your point, if this is a revenue and accounting system and it's not functioning properly, it'll have a fiscal impact on government. And of course, it'll have a fiscal impact on trade partners as well, trade customers, because, this is a cash flow issue and a complexity administrative burden. So, I'm not in that space, in that detail space. I let Kim take all of that detail. But, it's telling, though, that the United States has been talking about this for many, many years. And they've always been talking about a structured release, right? So, or parallel systems so that they can ease their way into this. That's not what we've got here. October 4th, the system goes dark. We lose all of that data and process mapping that all that software and customs mapping that our members and our clients use. And on the 21st, we get something brand new. And none of the trade customers outside of the software providers have been able to view a beta or production version of this. So it's a very strange approach. My official position on this is we frankly don't know what we're going to get. And if I'm 5 days out, you help me 5 days out from a major enterprise software release and your customers have not done beta or production training, embedment, activation, on your side, where do you think that implementation would go?
Well, it's going to be a train wreck, obviously. And so to your point, and folks, this is one of those things that as we're talking through this, I would say if you haven't made plans to attend the IE Canada conference, this would be a great one to be able to attend. I would be shocked if there were not some key officials attending this. It may be unplanned on some
That's
of the
my
CARM
game,
discussions.
sir, yes.
Yeah. But to that, I'm just like,
if you're, listeners have got business in Canada or, they have distributor relationships or their goods are going across the border, there's an excellent opportunity there for them to ground themselves in all things Canadiana. Go get yourself a beaver tail. You can get yourself, now you got to have a beaver tail when you're there. You got to do that.
Oh, it's like, my good. I brought home a baby Canuck. My daughter was born up there when I was working up there. So, it's been great and all of that.
Now, at the end of November, the river is probably not frozen to do some skating, but it will be a little chilly. So I do recommend that you bring the lid. The lids are required. It gets a little chilly up there up top when the winds are blowing off the river.
Holy smokes. I'm like, yeah, you had to have this in November. Oh my gosh,
The weather will be much different than Arkansas. Trust me. Yes.
Well, it's, winter's winter, but it's not going to be, but anyway, hey, listen, I got to say though, I'm looking forward, to, coming up to Ottawa.
We are too. I think it's going to be a great party.
I think it's going to be fantastic, and we're going to hit some key issues. So let's stop for a minute. How do I sign up? Where do I go to look for this?
Yeah, clearly you can go to our LinkedIn page, IE Canada link on LinkedIn, or you can go iecanada.com. There's registration details up on our website. Pretty simple process. Yeah. Don't try to make it that complicated.
No. All right. So iecanada.com, you can get in there, sign up, as they would say, the old, corny thing, be there or be square kind of a thing. But, literally you've got a great opportunity to, be able to, hear firsthand on some things. You know what? I would go so far as to say, if there is a petition or something to that effect that somebody wants to sign to try, I bet you there would be an effort there to say, we're signing on to this, to say postpone it or do whatever. But
yeah, we got that activity going on right now. But yeah, I mean, the important thing about this is that we're all headed towards the USMCA review. And we can, it's a great opportunity to sort of ground yourselves in Canada-US trade. And who's the number one customer for the United States in terms of mostly at the state level is absolutely, it's Canada. And the same thing applies in Canada. 80% of Canada's GDP is headed south. As you just, automotive, for goodness sake, is highly integrated. Products are crossing the border multiple times. And then here in Ontario, central Canada and Ontario, is now going to be the largest EV automotive production facilities are in the world, and U.S. and Canada are looking to create a USMCA supply chain for all the minerals and batteries and subcomponentry. And you saw this week the administration comments on U.S. manufacturing. So this is a huge topic, and so whatever the outcome of CARM is, we continue to work closely with our U.S. CBP colleagues. Kim's directly working with them, and regulatory cooperation is where it's at. The last thing we need is unilateral approaches that are impeding U.S., Canada, Mexico trade. We need to be much more integrated. And have a hemispheric advantage, in terms of our trade.
Actually, I was going to bring that up. So, in a sense, what you're going with there, Warrington, is this. Folks, China's playing hardball. And they have been, obviously there's been this, the U.S. has been predominantly, fighting back and forth, the saber rattling. Canada is involved in that as well, because China's processes is quite frankly undermining the Canadian economy, just like they're doing some of the things here. And so they're, dumping goods in, they're using slave labor. That's the other thing, is the forced labor prevention acts not only in the U.S., but in Canada and around the world. That is, China is doubling down. So what do you do about it? So here's where I was going to go, is that in the U.S., especially if you are, do a lot of business with imports and exports with Canada, IE Canada in November would be a good conference for you to attend, so you can hear firsthand on some things what's going on, because it is a joint. Canada and U.S. are huge trading partners. And with that, there are some things we need to align with. And so even from a U.S. perspective, this CARM thing we're talking about, it's not just affecting Canada, it's affecting, U.S. suppliers to Canada and vice versa. Your supply chain is going to get disrupted if you're counting on parts coming out of Canada down to the U.S. and those kinds of things. So all that to say, let me just say that I am looking forward to this. It's going to be a great conference. I think it will, I'm looking forward to recording the show, seriously. And with Kim Campbell, she and I always have a great time. Warrington, I'm going to probably put you to work there, to where you're going to be having to run around with the microphone and hitting some people up with their questions.
I MC this thing, but I won't hesitate to feed you some Canadian beers at the bar. How about that?
Oh, there you go. Hey, I got to tell you, they talk about how, Germans and others, and even in the U.S., everybody likes their beer. Man, Canadians love beer. I know that. So I remember that from being up there. But this is going to be a great time. And hopefully, the takeaways will be something that we can sink our teeth into, that here are definitive actions, or here are the topics that we need to be involved in from a regulatory affairs perspective. And then the third thing is, here are the topics that you need to make sure that you or your staff, and I'm talking to our listeners here, need to be proficient on. So, well, Warrington, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you. I can't wait to get this on in November. It's going to be fun.
Hey, listen, as we would say, I'm giddy as a filly on a spring morning to get in there and talk to everybody and see what they're doing. So this is going to be good. When I had the privilege of working in Canada back in the 90s, it was a lot of fun, but there were a lot of folks that are like, who is this guy? I'm coming back. Canada, get low. I'm coming back
make
up.
Make sure your passport's up to date, will you, please? I don't want to get a phone call from CBSA saying, we got this dude at the border. He says he's coming to your conference. Is this true?
Passport? What? We don't need no stinking passport. What do you?
Exactly.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Hey, listen, have a great day, Warrington. Thank you for being on our show. So,
all right, folks, cheers. Have a good one.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.